breathless and in shock. The frantic moments that foretold this scene, running from a wildfire that had gone from threatening their village near Patras in Greece to engulfing it in just a moment. Disbelief and then resignation at what's been lost. Nearby, a desperate resident tries to direct the aerial firefighters to save his livelihood. How to comprehend your whole life going up in flames. My house is on fire, this man says helplessly before walking away. Down the road, residents do what they can to save their homes. Futile perhaps, but desperate to do something other than consign it to flames. The scenes here are a microcosm of events playing out across the Mediterranean, as wildfires voraciously feed off perfect conditions: drought, a heat wave and high winds. In the past 24 hours alone, more than 150 new fires have broken out across Greece, and thousands of people have been evacuated. Almost 5,000 firefighters are engaged in a multi-front battle to contain the flames. Emergency workers, exhausted from a night of firefighting, sleep in the road. The scale of the fires mean they can't be everywhere, and in this yard, locals work into the night to protect horses from the flames. Miraculously, they all survived. But the same couldn't be said for the livestock on this land, as daybreak reveals the farmers' worst fears.
They left us at God's mercy. Everything burned down. It's total destruction. My whole farm was burnt.
The fear for homes and lives are being felt in Spain too, where a volunteer firefighter was killed overnight, trapped by the flames he was trying to extinguish. A wildfire in the northwestern region of Galicia has destroyed close to 3,500 hectares. 70-year-old Mary Carmen laments they weren't able to save more.
It's very painful. There are a lot of animals up there that we couldn't find, that will get caught in the fire.
In Albania, an exodus of people hints at what lies behind them. Over the hills, olive groves, a vital commodity, burned to the ground.
What happened to us has never happened before in Delvina. It's been 24 hours since the fire surrounded the city. The city lived only from these olive trees because it has neither factories nor plants, and these were burned down.
Albania announced they have arrested 6 people in the last 2 days for arson. But there's another culprit that's helping to fuel the wildfires.
It's not that climate change is igniting fires. Climate change is just making the environment ready, very burnable. And not only in the Mediterranean. I mean, we see now fires occurring in places that have historically never seen or never had a big fire problem. And then we see in the Mediterranean fires in intensity and speed. They overwhelm the system. Even the best equipped fire service are basically in a position where they can just watch.
Firefighters are currently battling 3 wildfires in Portugal. And across the Atlantic, with months left to go of the wildfire season, Canada has already recorded its second worst wildfires in history, as experts warn that this is the new reality.
Well, joining me now is Matthew Agarwala, a climate economist at the University of Sussex. If so many of these fires are started either accidentally or on purpose by arsonists, is there much you can do to plan for them in terms of infrastructure?
Well, there's a huge amount that we can do with respect to infrastructure. The main challenge is that, as the previous commenter noted, climate change is affecting the conditions that make the natural environment and our lived environment ripe for these fires to take place. And the fact that we have homes and businesses that are operating in the areas that are at risk for fire is a major cause for economic concern, in addition to and beyond the concerns for human health and loss of life.
Is the planning being done to take wildfires into account in southern Europe?
There is planning being done, but it's too slow, it's too little, and it's too much of an afterthought. For far too much of government decision-making around where we're allowed to build houses and what kind of houses we build, what infrastructure we build, and where we build it. All of that is largely driven by cost-benefit analyses that often neglect the rising risks of climate change and these sorts of fires. But it's not just the fires. In addition to these, we also face floods, landslides, extreme temperatures, and they affect the economy across the board.
But what should you actually do in these areas in terms of are you saying just don't build local infrastructure and housing in areas where you've got forestry, or remove forestry?
Well, land management in these areas is absolutely important. In many places, in parts of Greece, we have sort of unplanned housing development and infrastructure development that doesn't follow any sort of strategic development and deployment. That needs to change. Houses need to be planned, and the facilities, for instance, the water infrastructure in order to ensure that there are fire hydrants for the fire teams to use, that there are reservoirs. All of this needs to be planned throughout, but it's often coming as an afterthought, and that's the challenge. And the problem is that even places that have been well planned, where we do have the appropriate fire infrastructure, where we do have the evacuation plans in place, where we do have the appropriate transport infrastructure, as climate changes, the appropriateness of that infrastructure for the higher temperatures and more frequent and more intense fires is no longer going to be adequate. So even if we do the right thing today, if we fail to reduce our emissions and combat climate change, if we fail to adapt, then even well-planned infrastructure today will not be resilient to the climate conditions we're going to face in future years.
Is Britain vulnerable to this as well, or is this mainly continental Europe and North America?
Absolutely, Britain is vulnerable to this. Globally, we've seen about a 7-fold increase in the value of economic damages, just insured losses from extreme weather events just since the 1970s. So 7-fold increase in just half a century. Globally, we're looking at about $143 billion per year is just in these sorts of extreme events. But the UK is also at risk here. We do 12 billion pounds of trade with Greece every year. That's been rising, actually. The challenge, though, is that when there's an economic catastrophe in Greece, it filters through trade relationships to hit the UK. When there are big catastrophes that undermine labor productivity and output in other economies where we do trade, there's an impact through the financial system. And the United Kingdom's economy is heavily dependent on financial services. So even if we're not the ones facing the fires all the time, and even if this particular incident isn't located in our borders, through trade relationships and through the financial system, the UK is absolutely at risk.